You've ever ignored a woman waiting for her to chase you, and she simply vanished exactly. Most men use silence as a tactic and never understand why it fails. Machiavelli understood this 500 years ago, and what he wrote will completely change the way you see this game. Stay until the end, because what's in the third block of this video is what nobody has the courage to say out loud. Ignoring a woman can be the most powerful thing you do, or the biggest mistake of your life. It depends on a single variable that most men don't know about. Today you're going to understand what happens inside her mind when you disappear, why the silence of a man with no value seduces no one, how Machiavelli separated real power from empty performance, and what the exact signal is that you need to wait for before acting again. If you leave before the end, you'll miss precisely the point that explains why you keep getting it wrong. When a man of real presence disappears from a woman's radar, something starts happening inside her head that she herself cannot explain. The human brain is biologically wired to hate what is incomplete. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, the mind's tendency to keep processing whatever didn't reach a clear conclusion, and you, by disappearing strategically after creating real impact, become exactly that, a story without an ending inside her head. Her brain's reward system starts working against her, and in your favor. She revisits conversations, she recalls details, she begins to build, with her own imagination, a version of you that no message you send could ever construct. Machiavelli wrote that men judge more by what they see than by what they touch, and what she imagines about you while you're absent is worth infinitely more than anything you send at 11 at night with a 2-minute voice message trying to sound interesting. Silence creates empty space, and her imagination will fill that space with the best possible version of you, as long as you planted something real before disappearing. That's where the condition lives that almost every man ignores, and it's exactly where everything falls apart. Comment below. Have you ever used silence as a strategy and it worked? Or did it backfire? I want to read your answer. Here is the truth that nobody wants to admit out loud, and that most seduction content creators deliberately avoid because it's too uncomfortable. Ignoring is a tool exclusively for those who have already built real presence in her perception. If you never created genuine impact, if you were never memorable, if you never made her feel something that kept echoing after the conversation ended, then your silence won't make you seem mysterious or powerful. It will confirm in silence exactly what she already suspected, that you were disposable, that life could go on without thinking about you. Machiavelli made a surgical distinction between the prince and the common man, and that distinction applies here with frightening precision. The prince withdraws power that has already been felt. When he disappears, the void he leaves has weight, texture, history. Whoever never ruled threatens no one by going quiet. They simply leave an empty space that someone else fills without difficulty. You need to first exist with force inside her perceived reality for your absence to carry weight. You need to have been intense when you showed up. You need to have said something she didn't forget. You need to have created a moment she kept, even without knowing why. Ignoring without having built that value first is not a high-value strategy. It's invisibility, disguised as wounded pride. And the cruelest detail of all, she won't call you asking what happened. She won't stay up waiting for you to come online. She will simply continue her life as if you never existed, because in her perception, you truly never existed with enough force to leave a mark. Never try to conquer a position you cannot defend. Machiavelli discourses on Livy. If this made sense to you, hit the like button now. It helps this content reach more men who need to hear this. The true Machiavellian principle is not to vanish. It is to control with surgical precision when you appear and when you disappear. And that is radically different from pretending to be uninterested while sitting on the couch watching her status and pretending to be busy. There is an enormous difference between false scarcity and real scarcity, and she feels that difference even without being able to name what she's sensing. False scarcity is the man who stays online, sees the messages, lets time pass to seem occupied, and then responds as if he just saw them. She feels this in the rhythm of the conversation, in the quality of the reply, in the lack of substance behind the silence, and she quietly loses respect for you without ever telling you why. Real scarcity is completely different. It's the man who genuinely has a life with purpose, with projects, with something being built that truly consumes his attention, who shows up in interactions with intensity, with presence, with something worth saying, and disappears because he has something more important to do than manage feminine perception. Machiavelli wrote that the prince must act like the fox to recognize traps, and like the lion to frighten the wolves. Never both at the same time, Never either one randomly or impulsively, always with complete command over the timing of each move. Applied to attraction, every time you show up needs to be memorable, needs to leave something behind that keeps working in her head after the conversation ends. And every time you disappear needs to create a question she cannot answer on her own. If your presence doesn't impact, your absence doesn't hurt. Write that down. There is a type of man who learns about strategic silence and starts using it as emotional punishment. She did something he didn't like, or simply didn't respond the way he expected, and he vanishes for 3 days waiting for her to spiral into anxiety, chasing after him. That is not power. That is not strategy. That is the exact behavior of a child holding back tears in the corner of a room waiting for someone to notice and come comfort them, with the difference that the child, at least, is honest about what they're doing. Marcus Aurelius was precise about this in the Meditations. The man who acts out of emotion, disguised as strategy, fools no one but himself. You can call it indifference, you can call it focus, you can call it high value. But if deep down you are counting the hours waiting for a notification, you are operating from the same approval anxiety you are trying to hide. The silence of a high-value man has a completely different origin, and that origin is not a tactical decision you make on a Sunday afternoon. It is a natural and organic consequence of someone who has a mission, has focus, has something genuinely being built that consumes real energy and attention. It's not a WhatsApp performance. It's not a game of who gives in first. It is the direct result of a life worth living with intensity. And when that man returns, he returns exactly as he left, without explanation, without apology, without that veiled anxiety of someone who spent the whole time wondering what she thought during the absence. He returns from the same position of power because he never left it. Direct question. Do you have a life that justifies your absence? Or do you disappear and sit there waiting for a notification? Answer in the comments, honestly. Remember when I said the third block would change your view of this game? Here is what Machiavelli identified about the right moment to move the pieces, and it's not what you're expecting to hear. He wrote that the moment to act is not when you are at maximum advantage, not when you feel most confident, not when you've decided the silence has lasted long enough. The moment to move is when the other side begins to move to fill the space you left empty. In attraction, this principle has a concrete and specific application. The signal you're waiting for is not a desperate message from her at 2 in the morning saying she misses you. That signal rarely comes that way, and waiting for it means waiting for the wrong thing. The real signal is her showing up in your spaces without an obvious reason. It's her commenting something after days of silence as if nothing happened. It's her mentioning you to a mutual friend in a way that finds its way back to you. It's her appearing in a place where she knows you'll be. These are her movements to fill the void you created, and it is exactly at that moment that the high-value man acts. Not with anxiety, not with the rush of someone who finally received permission to exist, not revealing that he was waiting for that move. He acts with calm, with purpose, with the quiet precision of someone who understands the game deeply and has nothing to prove to anyone. The opportunity made some men great, but it was the great men who knew how to seize the opportunity. Machiavelli, discourses Marcus Aurelius wrote in the Meditations, do not waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about other people. Machiavelli and the Stoics arrived at the same point through completely different paths, one through the cold analysis of power and the other through the philosophy of the disciplined mind, and both converge on the same conclusion. The man who needs external approval to feel powerful has already lost before he begins, regardless of whatever tactic he uses to try to disguise that need. Real silence is not a technique you learn in a video and apply the following weekend like a script. It is the natural and inevitable consequence of someone so completely focused on building something great that he simply has no energy available to beg anyone's attention. The question you need to take from here is not how do I ignore her the right way. The question that changes the game is, what are you building that will make your absence carry weight on its own, without any effort on your part? Think about that. If this video made you see silence in a different way, hit the like button now. It takes 2 seconds and helps this content reach more men who need to hear this. Comment below which point hit you the hardest. I read all of them. And if you want to keep going deeper, the next video will show you what Machiavelli says about the man who tries too hard and why that profile is the easiest to manipulate in any relationship. See you there.